Hey YouTube, Joeboy here. So, the official translation of One Piece chapter 1053 is out. You guys know how we do the video. We just talk about comments from you guys from the last chapter reaction. That's it. We don't do any more than that. So, let's get into it. Comment from Kenneth Adams. The Gorosei didn't want to suppress just Luffy's photo. They also wanted to remove the D in his name. They did the same thing to Roger near the end of his journey as well. There's clearly something about getting close to Laugh-Tale and the D-Clan linking the two. Way back in the distant past, pretty much when I first created my channel, these were some of the things that I was most excited for and talked about the most. Unfortunately, I pretty much hate every video that I made back in 2016 for, if no other reason, then the quality of them is not very good. I made them after work, and I didn't have much time, so I'd get off work at night and try to upload a video in like 30 minutes. I work better when I have time to formulate my thoughts and the way things are worded, as well as just general effort towards the video itself. That's beside the point. Back in the day, I wasn't too interested in making mega theories. So theories that, essentially the length of every chapter review now. Especially something like Arter. Arter made his mega theory about One Piece that was like hours and hours long, fully edited. Props to him, but we didn't do that. So instead we covered each individual sort of question in a 10 to 20 minute video, and then it became this spiraling puzzle of, to understand this video, you have to watch that video, and it was just awful. But some things really do require a lot of time to properly argue, to be as comprehensive as you can possibly be. And the importance of the initial D or the D-Clan is just one of those things, because you have clues spread out across the entirety of all 1,000 chapters of One Piece. But we'll try to cover this as quickly as I feel like I can. I think the most central evidence in the story for my thoughts here is when Whitebeard told Blackbeard, Marshal D. Teach, that he for sure was not the person that Gold D. Roger was waiting for. I think that there's a reason that Whitebeard said this specifically to Blackbeard, because Blackbeard is a D. It also lets us know that Roger is waiting for someone. I assume this person to be a D. They know, or it has been prophesized in some way, that a D is the person who is going to find the One Piece and, as Whitebeard tells us, will turn the world upside down. Simultaneously, I think that it can be inferred from Rayleigh, when the Straw Hats first encountered him in Sabaody, that there is a connection between the Void Century, the Lost History, the Poneglyphs, and the initial D. When Robin asked Rayleigh about the D, he mentioned that the Roger Pirates had discovered these lost secrets. It places these things together. And even more recently in the story, this connection is embellished because Oden was very direct in his flashback, explaining that when the Roger Pirates discovered the true history, they also simultaneously discovered the meaning of D. And the theory from this point is essentially that those with the initial D were associated with, connected to, or responsible for the creation of the Poneglyphs, and therefore recorded the lost history, probably, as Clover tells us, that the Poneglyphs spoke of a great kingdom, an ancient kingdom, that this kingdom was also related to the initial D. And this lines up with other contexts that we have. Corazon reveals that D is the enemy of God, the enemy of the celestial dragons. We also know that the initial D from Law is supposed to be a secret initial. They are not supposed to reveal it. It also adds up with the fact that the world government wants to cover up these people that have this lost initial. Clover theorizes that during the Void Century, the ancient kingdom was defeated, and ultimately after they were defeated, a new power rose up, the world's government. So you start to understand perhaps part of the conflict of the Void Century. You have the ancient kingdom destroyed, associated with the D, and then you have the winner of this battle, the 20 kingdoms who formed the world government, wants to hide these secrets, along with the history that occurred there in the Poneglyphs. During the Void Century, the D was the world government's enemy. And the Gorosei say that to them, D means danger. And it appears as though there perhaps is some prophecy or some knowledge that the D will rise up again and eventually defeat the world government, turn the world upside down. Robin asks Luffy as well, I think at some point in the story, why do the D fight? You get the sense of an unresolved conflict. And this lines up with what Korea calls it, the will of D. The will of the D clan or the D group, passed down potentially over time, inherited will. The fight is not finished, and the D will have some sort of champion, which seems to me to be likely to be the person that Roger was waiting for. And I personally think that Shanks is going to expound upon this at some point in the story, and we'll get an even clearer picture as to why Shanks sacrificed his arm, or bet the future, as he told Whitebeard, on Luffy, who happens to be a D. I think that Shanks thought or believed that Luffy was the person that Roger was waiting for. So I hope that this further convinces you that there absolutely is a connection to finding Laugh-Tale, things about Laugh-Tale, the true history, and the initial D. Now from this point, I think a natural way to continue this conversation is, why is the world government now starting to cover up Luffy's, or wants to try to cover up Luffy's initial, like they did with Gold Roger, right? They took the D out of his name, called him Gold Roger. They wanted to do the same with Luffy, but what is the purpose in suppressing this initial? To me, this is a very big question that I hope has a really logical answer behind it. It's about here that we really delve into theory territory, because there's not a lot that we have to go on to potentially substantiate this. But my theory is that we know from Trafalgar Law that the D initial is a secret initial, that you're not supposed to share it. Now, of course, there's examples that break that, and it seems almost more common than not in the story, with Luffy, with Roger, with Dragon, Jaguar D. Saw, with Blackbeard. All of these are sort of at the forefronts of our mind, because these are the only people who would want to reveal that they are a D. But I presume that there are dozens, hundreds, perhaps thousands of others who still carry this D initial, but we just don't know. And it's possible that they are awaiting their champion. There's some lore passed down, something to the effect of that there's going to be one D that will change the world. Another way of looking at this as well is that Luffy's name, having a D in the initial and him being so notorious, is kind of like reading a poneglyph, right? This is forbidden void century knowledge, even the D initial itself. So it may perhaps bridge the gap between when Luffy reads the poneglyphs or Robin reads the poneglyphs and the world finds out the truth, that having an anchor like a D initial in Luffy's name and seeing it in other places as well, that could help the world understand and move against the world government. I do think that, kind of like readers reading this story early on in One Piece, Oda got an SBS question about this, where someone just was like, what does the D mean? And Monkey D. Luffy's name, it seems kind of weird. So regular readers picked up in that, and I would suspect that the world would as well. Like, what does this D mean in this new Yonko's name? And it makes them ask questions that the government probably doesn't want asked. So that's my thoughts for now. Hopefully this wasn't too tangential, but this is obviously going to only become a bigger thing in the story as we go forward. And this is pretty much what we know up until now. Next comment from Risen. Why is everyone overthinking the volcanic eruption so much? It was just a way to Team Rocket Big Mom and Kaido out of Wano. Momo even called it a send-off. I don't recall, and I can't find where Momo referred to the volcanic eruption as a send-off, but I might have missed it. Well, I think that people are overthinking the volcanic eruption because the possibilities here are open, right? I mean, you have something that occurs in the story. It could go in multiple different directions. However, I will say that if the point of the volcanic eruption was just simply to send Big Mom and Kaido off elsewhere, or Big Mom off elsewhere, maybe Kaido is still there, they're still alive, it didn't kill them, but they were saved because of the eruption, and we're not going to get any more about, you know, the borders of Wano crumbling down, or earthquakes, or any more seismic or volcanic activity, I'd be totally fine with that. If we got some sort of flashback, it doesn't have to be a flashback, but a moment where we see a character like Big Mom again, and it's explained what happened to her, and how the eruption essentially allowed her to escape alive, and then she continues to do something in the main story in some way. But essentially right now what we're waiting for is some sort of result of the eruption. So until something like this is explained, I think people are going to speculate. Next comment from Daniel. I'm just going to throw it out here. I think Pluton is actually located in the lava caverns underneath Wano, the same place where Kaido and Big Mom wound up after the raid. We assume Pluton is some kind of ship that sails on the water, but considering it's named after the Roman god of the underworld, Pluto, I think that there's a possibility it's actually some kind of subterranean vessel that's built to withstand the intense heat of magma, and its capability to destroy islands is due to some mechanism it has that can trigger volcanic or seismic activity deep underground with catastrophic results. I'm just gonna go on record and say if something like this happens, that would be crazy hype. I would love to see something like that. If it's specifically designed to go underwater or through the ground into where you might find heat and pressure and magma so that it can survive like this protected underneath Wano, and then we're able to discover this, or Big Mom or Kaido are able to discover this because of where Luffy and Law sent them. This actually reminds me a lot of a mostly forgotten cover series, a cover story that we got for Gidatsu from the Sky Islands. So Gidatsu was a kind of meme character in the Sky Islands. Chopper fought him. He fell through the cloud and landed onto the blue sea. We then follow his journey like we follow a lot of other former antagonists in a cover story. And essentially the point of the story was that he encountered people that were digging for water. Eventually he joined some sort of company that literally dug, and he could dig from one random island underground and then eventually appeared in Alabasta. This is one of those cover stories where it's hard to see like the point of it. But if Pluton does something similar to this, immediately you're like, oh, this was what Oda had in mind when he wrote the cover series. I just look for these ties because essentially every cover story has tied back into the main story in some way, with very rare exception. Like for instance, Buggy going to Impel Down, or Garp training Kobe and Helmeppo, Jimbei traveling to Whole Cake Island. All these cover stories, they end up relating back. You find these characters again, except for in a few cases where you kind of know that it will eventually. The two ones that are just hardest to understand is Wapple and Oda's intention for his toy factory, and Gidatsu. What's the point of all the digging? Yeah, I mean, we could go on forever. I just, as a possibility, plausibility, I buy this entirely, and I would be excited if this is the direction it goes. And I think that this discussion ties directly into this comment from JB Cricket Coaching. I was of the impression that Big Mom and Kaido still has a part to play, and showing their bodies in the lava meant more than their defeat. I feel like they may be the ones to find Pluton. This would be an incredible subversion. I'm not sure where we would go from here, so it's hard to wrap my mind around it, but you know, it's like, okay, well, now we know that Pluton is somewhere in Wano, and we just kind of expect that Sukiyaki is just going to show Robin where it is if he knows. So it would be incredibly, and just an incredible twist if she's learning about it and discovers for sure Pluton is here, but then Big Mom, who presumably has already left the country, has actually discovered Pluton by chance because it was buried underneath Wano. And then where we go from here with Big Mom, with Pluton, we're going to get into another comment after this, but it's just, again, I can't wrap my mind around it, but if Oda started going down this rabbit hole, it would be mind-blowing. So next comment from Bill. Big Mom pirates in the Navy may have made contact. The moment when the Denden Mushi call was interrupted in chapter 1052, that may have been the Big Mom pirates and not Green Bull. They might be shaking hands temporarily so that they can both work together to get into Wano, as foreshadowed by Parasparrow shaking hands with Marco at the beginning of Onigashima raid. And so we might be about to witness the raid on the Flower Capital. Green Bull is not marching there alone. He called a warship in after he took out the Beast Pirates. The Navy Big Mom Pirate Alliance might be planning a surprise attack on Yonko Luffy, who are distracted by the partying and has his guard down. However, unlike Onigashima raid, the raid on the Flower Capital might fail, sorry Morge, as Yonko Luffy flex his powers and declare Wano as his territory. So first things first, it seems incredibly likely that Big Mom is still alive. I know some people think that she's died. I'm not there, so we're not going to speculate as if that's the case. So the main reason I decided to highlight this comment is because the association of Big Mom with the world government is just absolutely fascinating to me. Do I think that this is likely? Is like anything in the story point in this direction in particular? No. Really, absolutely not. But from a plausibility standpoint, it does seem like a really interesting maneuver, both for the world government and for Big Mom. I just want to put myself in Big Mom's mind right now. What are the things which motivate her? We now know that she is no longer a Yonko. I've had other comments, we could bring these up as well, which discuss this, but a comment that I got several times was that it's possible that the world government isn't responsible for choosing the Yonko. It is actually Big News Morgan's. The only power that the world government actually has is to issue bounties. And interesting in this case, they gave Luffy, Law, and Kid all the same bounty. It makes you wonder maybe if they hoped that these other people would be considered Yonko rather than Luffy. But Big News Morgans couldn't be controlled and actually knows the truth. Remember, Big News Morgans announced Luffy as the 5th Yonko. I'm not sure that that was a thing that the world government intended. It's more of like the hype factor from the news, which then goes to the entire world. You guys know I've speculated for a long time that Big Mom might become an ally. And it seems like a ridiculous theory, and at this moment it is. It requires a lot of other things to happen for it to be even slightly realistic. And those things have not happened. In fact, it has gone in the exact opposite direction, where Big Mom chased the Straw Hats to Wano because she wanted retribution for what they had done. They made a fool out of her. Well, now that will only be worse. And I believe she said something to the effect that Kid and Law are now on her list too. So Luffy, Kid, and Law, Big Mom wants them dead. So for me, there's two realistic general choices that Big Mom could make at this moment. She could go back into her territory and sort of stabilize, right? She is still, if she is alive, we presume, incredibly individually strong, plus her family. Even though they didn't do much during the actual combat, they still have a lot of individually strong members. So it may be important to Big Mom to go back into her territory and fend off anybody who wants to take advantage or seize opportunity because she's lost Yonko status. The other half of this, and I think the more interesting half of this, is if Big Mom really stops caring about Totlin because of her desire for revenge. Or another way to take this, which would have the same effect, is it dawns on Big Mom that her time of potentially being able to find the One Piece and becoming the Pirate Queen and transforming the world into her image is coming to a close, and it's going to require drastic efforts on her part. Essentially, she has to focus on being a part of the competition rather than hedging into her fortress. Either way, the things that I want from Big Mom involve her family. I want to see more interactions of Big Mom with her family because that's where I see unresolved plots within the story. So to go back to the end of Whole Cake Island when Luffy defeated Katakuri, some of the subtext of that fight was that I believe Katakuri still had some fight left in him. It turned into a battle of willpower, and ultimately Luffy won that battle because Katakuri wants Big Mom to be defeated. And so why does he actually want this? Well, the Big Mom Pirates are a family. Dysfunctional maybe, but still a family. And you can see from context from throughout the arc that the Big Mom Pirates actually do love Big Mom, despite her flaws. You get the sense that slowly over time, their perception of Big Mom is crumbling. Big Mom has these rages, these hunger pangs that they don't understand. They think that she'll kill children. And I think that it's easy to create this headcanon that it's because of her role as a pirate, needing to be fearsome and intimidating, and the stress that comes along with that, that maybe that's why they're losing their mother. So essentially, what I believe is I think what the Big Mom Pirates want, with the exception of some of them that have ambitions such as Perospero, or some of them that are cruel, they want Big Mom to go back into her territory, give up the dreams of becoming the Pirate Queen, and just appreciate what she has. So this idea of stabilizing her territory, I think that that's what the majority of the children want. So the pathway of conflict drives story. The pathway of conflict with her own family is if Big Mom essentially chooses to abandon them, continuing to pursue revenge and her own ends. I think that we're missing some key characterization from Big Mom regarding her own family. What did she think about Katakuri losing to Luffy? I have a theory that Katakuri is no longer a Sweet Commander, and this theory extends in the past as well. Essentially, every time a Sweet Commander lost, they were no longer allowed to be a Sweet Commander. So Snack, who was formerly a Sweet Commander, was demoted. Katakuri lost, so he was demoted. Cracker lost, so he was demoted. So you're left with one Sweet Commander, and that's Smoothie. Then you have Wano, where Big Mom is taking place in the battle, but her children, the vast majority of them, never actually show up. I want to know how Big Mom feels about this. Does she start to harshly judge her own children? Does she view them as being failures, as being incompetent? I know that you could say that about Big Mom, but Big Mom is she's her own character in her own mind. She's not particularly sane, right? So I could imagine this being true. Like with the arranged marriage of Lola to Loki, where Big Mom thought that she would acquire the power of Elbaf and the power of the giants, Big Mom blames everybody but herself. So along the same train of thought, you could wonder, does she view her children as being capable of helping her achieve her ends, such as revenge? Another element of this which interests me greatly is that Big Mom created her territory in Totland for one reason above all else, and that was because she was waiting for the return of Mother Carmel. Back in Whole Cake Island, when Mother Carmel disappeared, the island where Big Mom was when she was 5 years old, that was Whole Cake Island. She left for a time, but eventually she returned, and she created the paradise that she thought Mother Carmel wanted. She wants Mother Carmel to be proud of her. So the theory is that Totland and Whole Cake Island only matter to Big Mom for as long as she believes that Mother Carmel will return. Does she still believe that Mother Carmel will return? And if she doesn't, will she abandon it? Further creating conflict with her own family. The other key thing about Big Mom that we know is that she's a plotter. She's a schemer. And she's more than willing to lie to your face in order to get what she wants. So with this in mind, having lost faith in her family, in her children, and in her subordinates, but potentially have the opportunity to strike a deal with the world government to get what she wants, revenge, and become the pirate queen potentially, that is something that makes sense to me and would take the story in a very unexpected direction. Tying this back to previous comments, finding Pluton may only exacerbate this desire. And as the world government already intends on initiating a great cleansing anyway, this power falling into the hands of a pirate dead set on revenge against other pirates could be a good thing. Meanwhile, you have the perspective of the world government. And I think that you know that even though Big Mom is a very powerful, fearsome opponent, a Yonko, at least in terms of individual power, that they want Luffy's head more. And I think that they should be doing whatever is in their power to try and eliminate Straw Hat Luffy. So if Big Mom is still strong and not dead, this is a very realistic pathway, even though nothing in the story directly indicates that this is going to happen. Of course, it would have to be covered up, especially after the debacle with the Chichibukai, but we know that the Gorosei at least understand the value of having pirates on your side, and they know that Luffy is the chosen one. So outside of the box or not, I think that this is a really cool idea. Next comment from Marty, and I got several comments which were essentially exactly the same, so I assume it originates from somewhere else, but he said, I think you overthink the bounties. It's just a simple calculation. Kaido, 4.6 billion berries, Big Mom, 4.4 billion berries, total 8.999 billion berries. And then you add up Law, Kid, and Luffy, and you get 9 billion. So technically winners have higher bounties than losers after new bounties were issued. It never occurred to me to add these up in this way, but it's fascinating. I think that because the numbers are so close, I think that this had to have been in Oda's mind. The world government tried to frame it in a way where Luffy, Law, and Kid are equally responsible for the defeat of 2 Yonko. It's essentially a 3 versus 2, even though we know from watching the battle that Luffy did a little bit more work. And it was his allies and his subordinates which defeated the remaining top tiers, the Yonko commanders, and the Flying Six, further establishing his supremacy. Next comment from Nicholas, I think the bounties of Kid, Law, and Luffy were meant to create infighting right after fighting Kaido and Big Mom. I think that this is also a very realistic take, and we can see immediately that Kid is salty that he's not a Yonko. The world government may not have chosen who was the Yonko, but they're making a point to, I think, give hope to Law and Kid, or maybe they hoped to create that effect that, hey, you're still a player in the game. Next comment from CRSV. I don't know why it's not talked about much, but Law's goals from the beginning are officially reached now. First, the defeat of Doflamingo, and now the defeat of Kaido. What are Law's real goals? Or is he satisfied? So I don't really want to get into all the panels of this, but it's very clear that Law knows more than most anybody else, aside from Robin, about the history of D and what that means. You know, like, he was talking to Corazon, how Corazon revealed that D is the natural enemy of God, and how a D will create another storm. I think that Law has echoed this at certain points in time. So I personally think that there's reason to speculate that Law might consider himself to be, as we talked about before, the person that Roger was waiting for, perhaps not framed in that context, but he knows that a D is supposed to turn the world upside down or save it, and he could have thought that he is supposed to be that person. And so we've gone through the journey, and I think that at this point in time it's fair to speculate that Law realizes that Luffy is this dude, and so he may want to support Luffy in his journey to become the king of the pirates. At the same time, you see some hesitancy from him in various ways. Like, he doesn't quite trust Luffy despite Luffy's insane strength. He trusts Luffy's strength, but not the brain behind it, which is curious. This is another kind of, like we're talking about Kid, it's a philosophical debate that I think has room for Oda to get into. Luffy is daring and headstrong and goes into each successive conflict without much thought, whereas Law is very calculating. He makes plans. He tries to improve the odds as much as he can before any blows are actually exchanged. And we've talked about this concept multiple times throughout the course of the channel, but basically Luffy's going to become the king of the pirates. He's the chosen one because he is the way that he is, and I think it's potentially a lesson that Law has to learn, something Luffy can give him. But I want to shout out to Randy Troy. Another really cool theory about what Law's true motives are is that Law is a member of SWORD. I'm not going to go into all the details of this theory, but it's essentially speculated that Corazon, as a subordinate of Sengoku and Corazon both are members of SWORD as factions, marine factions that are against the celestial dragons. If Corazon was a member of SWORD, he could have indoctrinated Law, or Law could have learned after Corazon's death what Corazon stood for and inherited that will. So it'd be a fantastic turn of events to find out that Law is actually secretly a marine who is trying to take down the celestial dragons. And here you have a funny coincidence. Of course, we understand immediately why Law wants to take down Doflamingo because of their personal history, but Doflamingo is also a former celestial dragon. He's puppeteering the underworld that the celestial dragons are very involved in, and by taking him down you start to disrupt these threads and bring to the surface the various misdeeds that these celestial dragons are doing. Then next we go to Kaido. What is Law's personal connection to Kaido? Why did he choose Kaido to take down? We don't know that, but Kaido is also intimately involved in the same underworld drama that is directly tied to celestial dragons. So these things are conveniently allied, right? SWORD perhaps against the celestial dragons. Law as a pirate has achieved or is working towards their ends, it appears. And then of course the bigger piece of evidence here is that there seems to be some connection that Oda wants us to have between Drake and Law. They have a really strange interaction when we first meet them in Sabaody. We of course learn later that Drake was the son of Diaz Barrels, which involved Law acquiring his fruit, so they have history in that capacity, but it seems like more than that, especially because Law and Drake never had any personal reaction or interaction that we know of. But we now know that Drake is a member of SWORD, so maybe? This could also explain some of the hesitancy that you see from Law. Rather than being a true pirate who can put all of his faith into Luffy, he would also simultaneously be a marine, and Luffy's existence would be confusing. Next comment from Maximum Volti. My immediate assumption in regards to Pluton is that it's Onigashima. I'm basing this solely on the lingering mystery of the island's previous name as alluded to by Marco. there's a lot of parallels to Wano and Thriller Bark, and one of the big twists in the latter was that the island was actually a ship. Onigashima, in this arc, was for all intents and purposes a ship flying through the sky during the raid. So yeah, maybe Pluton is Onigashima? So I really understand the logic of this. We know it's a Chekhov's gun that Oda placed in the story that Onigashima has another name. Marco revealed this. So when we're looking for identities of Pluton, right? Pluton is somewhere in Wano, we know this, and we know that Onigashima previously went by another name. These two things align very neatly, and it would be, it's a realistic answer from that standpoint. My problem is that I just don't know how that would work. Essentially, for this to make any sense to me, Onigashima would have to go full Transformer mode, and all the rock would fall off and you could see it transform into something that would make more sense. Because Onigashima couldn't move on its own, it moved using Kaido's power. So maybe Kaido is, or the Devil Fruit, the Dragon Devil Fruit is Pluton, and then at that point, Onigashima being Pluton is irrelevant because you can pick up any island potentially the same way and it would work, right? Maybe I can't explain this exactly right, but I'm pretty skeptical of this because my imagination just can't fathom how this could work. I definitely prefer the idea that Onigashima previous name was like God Valley or something like that. It was an island of importance at some point in the past, and Kaido changed its name. Next comment from T-Ball. Man, I could see the Sunny actually getting destroyed or severely damaged along with the ships of all the other crews. It could force a new, larger crew to band together and sail Pluton, making it the flagship of the Grand Fleet. I'd rather see the Sunny survive and be the flagship though, with Pluton in tow. My philosophy behind the Thousand Sunny is that the Thousand Sunny is a crewmate. Oda went to great lengths in the first half of the story with the Going Merry to establish that the ship has a life of its own, and it is a crew member. So adding a new, better crew member that does the Sunny's job better than it can would be like if we added a new crew member who supplanted any of the current Straw Hats in whatever their essential role in the crew is, like adding another cook who can do it better than Sanji, or adding another navigator who could do it better than Nami, or adding another swordsman who will become the world's strongest and not Zoro. All of those things are just absolutely baffling. It would be ridiculous to speculate them. But with the ship, I think that it is a little bit less unclear, but I apply the same rules to it. So the Thousand Sunny being destroyed and or replaced for any reason kind of makes me feel sick. Even the idea of having the Pluton tow behind it would just be incredibly awkward. Next comment from Goda Curry. We haven't seen the curtain for Act 3 close yet, so this makes me feel that Wano isn't over yet. The act thing was something that we discussed a lot early on in Wano. And it was, if you follow the community at all, you know that a traditional Kabuki play has 5 acts, and we discussed and dissected them at great length, such as the end of the 3rd act usually culminates in some sort of great tragedy. The 4th act is a major battle, and the 5th one resolves it really quickly. I gave up on speculating these things, and the reason that I did so is because I want badly to not create bad expectation, which is essentially, I don't understand the rules of Kabuki plays. I don't understand what Oda's intention is for these. Yes, it's traditional to have 5 acts, but can you have a Kabuki play that is only 3? I'm certain that there are examples of that, or only 4, where the 4th one is some sort of quick resolution. It suddenly changes it, where I can't say for certain what will or won't happen, and I don't want people to believe that it has to be a certain way. What I can say is that until the curtain for Act 3 closes, we can't leave Wano, right? That seems pretty much established at this point in time. But I can't guarantee that we'll have a 4th act or a 5th act. However, if we did have a 4th or 5th act, I think that my video from a couple weeks ago where we were criticizing Wano as a whole, I think that video is going to go into the Void Century. We're essentially going to burn it because suddenly there is going to be a ton more content, right? Especially if there's 5 acts. If we have a whole battle in the 4th act, it will probably change my opinion of the arc entirely. To make that video a knee-jerk, reactionary bit of trash, just because we were led to believe that the arc was ending, and of course Oda created that expectation, but we were in hindsight, totally wrong. So I hope that is the case. That is in my dreams, right? We have Act 3 ends in the next couple chapters, and then we have an entire Act 4 of 15 to 20 chapters, and then a short resolution after that. And I'm sure that given that amount of time, whatever my criticisms from before were are going to be destroyed completely. But I'm finding it hard to bet on it at this moment. I can't fully invest in that idea. So I'm truly in wait and see mode. But the fact that we left the break off where we did does inspire hope. Next comment from Fojoy's arc, and this is going to be very contentious, but to be honest, I would love to see Kaido return at the end of Wano to face off against Green Bull. Here are my thoughts. Luffy made such an impact on Kaido, who was, in a sense, striving for another memorable fight, as well as to an extent become Joy Boy. To witness Luffy achieving that goal in front of his eyes, whilst giving him the fight he was longing for such a long time, and reminding him of his other ambitions and dreams. That being said, for Kaido to return to fend off Green Bull but dying in the end would be such a hype moment. To me, it almost feels taboo to speculate this, like there's been an agenda and narrative created in the community that to even have an ounce of hope that Kaido is not dead, that he is going to return, is like you're doing something nasty. And so, despite saying that, right, like, I think that it is totally plausible. I think that Kaido got the fight that he wanted to. He was defeated legitimately and could see Luffy as being Joy Boy, and that could result in a lot of strange things happening. This idea of him fighting Green Bull is very similar to some of the thoughts that I've had about Big Mom. Now, is it going to happen or not? I don't know, but I like the fact that I feel like I can't speculate this almost frustrates me. I imagine dozens of comments being like, Joy Boy's coping because he just can't accept that Kaido is dead. But it's like, you don't know that Kaido is dead because we haven't seen that. That is not a confirmed thing. And aside from how Kaido might perceive Luffy, we also know that Green Bull is responsible for finishing off Kaido's subordinates, killing them. So that's even more motivation potentially for Kaido to fight Green Bull. Assuming he is in a state that is capable of fighting and he is not dead, which is, again, an unconfirmed thing. You guys know I really want Kaido to return. I think that there's narrative reasons why it's necessary for my enjoyment of the arc as a whole, but I also don't want to disappoint myself. But I also hate expecting something that I don't like. It's a real clusterfuck. And finally, we have the last comment from, I'm going to try this one, Young Gauto. Yeah? He can't be seen, Luffy can't be seen as the king of the pirates just yet. He hasn't accomplished everything Roger did, such as finding the One Piece. I'm sure that that's the least you need to have accomplished to be king of the pirates. They haven't even deciphered all the poneglyphs yet. You may be correct about him being considered the strongest pirate in the verse, as of right now, but we still haven't seen all of what Blackbeard has been up to or has up his sleeve. I just kind of disagree with this premise, that you have to find the One Piece to be considered the king of the pirates. Narratively speaking, okay? Narratively speaking, within the confines of the story of One Piece as Oda has set and the expectation he's created, of course, right, Luffy, finding the One Piece is going to make Luffy the king of the pirates in people's minds, right? That's just how it's going to happen. We know that already. However, the king of the pirates, I mean, if you're literally the strongest pirate and you've conquered every other pirate group and you own the seas, you don't need to have found this mystery for the world to consider you to be king. It's just a simple fact that no one has been able to create this kind of supremacy, with the possible exception of Rox D. Zebek, whose achievements, like Luffy, was majorly covered up. Being the king of the pirates is about being considered by the world to be unrivaled. And all I'm really trying to say is not that Luffy is going to become king of the pirates or should be king of the pirates at this point from a narrative perspective, but just from a purely like the things that he's done, and we don't know what Blackbeard has done at this point in time, so maybe this could be different otherwise. If you knew all the truths that Shanks is his mentor, likely his friend, but the truth about Buggy, the fact that Luffy pretty much soloed Kaido, is at least equal in terms of strength, and the other top tiers have not done this, plus all of the ways in which Luffy has done things that nobody has ever done in history that we know of, right? I think that there's a fair argument that Luffy is already should be considered the king of the pirates, even if it's not going to happen. You gotta remember, like, a lot of Luffy's feats are rumor at this point in time, but the world government's covered him up, defeating the Shichibukai that he has, Gecko Moria, Crocodile, Impel Down. There's a lot of things in his lobby, right? These are things that we know that he's done that the world may not know. And whether he's king or not has to do with the perception of the world. So if they don't know things, then that's important, but it doesn't change sort of the reality, like what Luffy deserves at this juncture. But anyway, guys, that's pretty much what I had to say today. I hope that you found some cool comments and you guys enjoyed the video. As always, I'm curious as to what you guys think. Leave your thoughts in the comment section below. Like the video if you liked the video, dislike the video if you disliked the video, subscribe if you want to be notified for my future content. And as always, guys, have